Hey guys, what is up, and I welcome each and every one of you to a new League of Legends video. So when I made my most underrated AD Assassin Kha'Zix video, a lot of you seem to really enjoy that type of content. And I decided to make another version of it, but this time talking about what I believe to be is the most underrated AP assassin. And if you somehow have not guessed who the champion I will be talking about in this video is, well, it's gonna be Akali. Whenever I'm talking about Akali, especially now considering you almost never see her, it gives me a lot of nostalgic feelings because way back in maybe season 2 or maybe early season 3, I used to main the hell out of this champion. Way back before Zed existed or when Talon didn't exist or was just still fairly new, Akali was easily my go-to assassin champion. But for the longest time, she's really just not seen anywhere in League of Legends, whether it's competitive play, solo queue, even in normals. I mean, take a look at her play ratio in Platinum and above in Ranked. Combining the play percentage ratio for top and middle Akali, it's still only just barely above 2%. So let's talk about Akali. What makes her strong? What makes her bad? Why was she never played before? Why maybe she now can be very strong? Builds, items, runes, tips and tricks, and all that good stuff. Also, quick shout out to someone named Best Akali FL, because as usual I did a lot of research on Akali before making this video to get a better understanding of how she is currently, and a lot of the information he has posted online was very useful. So let's start off as usual with the positives and the negatives of this champion. So one thing that I really enjoy about Akali that I feel like a lot of other assassins lack because they only do one of the two things is the fact that Akali has both fantastic burst damage while also having very good consistent damage. So when jumping on your target, proccing the Q mark damage with your auto attack, which deals bonus damage as well thanks to your passive, plus your ultimate and gunblade damage as well, and even your E somewhere in the middle also, well, it doesn't take science to prove that that is a lot of burst damage. But the cool thing is after she's done doing that rotation of burst damage, well, she'll be able to do more or less that same amount of damage again in about 2 or 3 seconds. The next thing to talk about is a big reason why I feel like Akali truly can be viable at the moment compared to a few patches ago. Back when the item Oracle Lens existed and it was able to reveal invisible units and have full vision of that unit as well, Akali was rendered relatively useless. Because whenever she would rely on her W for the invisibility, well, all you have to do is use the Oracle Lens and you can have perfect vision of her, and it's really not that hard to kill her at that stage of the game. However, now that Oracle Lens doesn't fully reveal the champion but only shows where they were maybe a second ago, it is not as hard of a counter, and now you just absolutely need to have pink wards. Now, one of my personal favorite things about Akali is the mobility offered with her ultimate. Whether you're using it to juke around your opponents because it's a fast long range dash, or you're using it to stick onto your target, whether it's in a team fight or a 1v1 scenario on maybe the ADC, the mid lane mage, etc. It is very hard to get away from this champion just because of the long range 3 dashes she has within her kit. And well, for an assassin to be able to fully stick on the target that they're trying to assassinate, I mean, that's obviously very important. Now, one of the most infamous things about Akali, which is in the negative section, is how weak she is pre-level 6 versus ranged opponents. But as she does hit that level 6 and gets maybe 2 or 3 stacks of her ultimate ready to go, the damage and her power spike overall as a champion goes through the roof compared to how she was 1 level ago. And if you're facing someone that has little experience versing Akali, well, they're not going to be expecting this huge power spike of damage at level 6. Another absolutely massive reason as to why I think Akali can be very strong at the moment are the changes to Hextech Gunblade. Now that the cooldown of this item is reduced on single target auto attacks or spells, on top of also giving you just flat regeneration on the damage that you deal to your target, well, someone like Akali, who works very well off of hybrid damage, is gonna benefit off of this absolutely magnificently. Trust me, just go into a game, rush this item first, and just observe the ridiculous amount of lifesteal and spell damage that you have. Now, the negatives of Akali, like I said, pre-level 6 against ranged opponents or mages is not very good. You can get abused quite a lot, so you have to play relatively safe. As any assassin, she is somewhat reliant on getting at least a little bit ahead, somewhere around early to mid game. Pink wards are an absolute counter and a nightmare to Akali. When diving the backline within a team fight, you make sure you do it at the right time, because if you don't, well, you're gonna get killed quite fast. And like most assassins, she doesn't really offer any CC for her team. So now that we got the basic information and the overall analysis of Akali's current state out of the way, let's talk about general tips and tricks when playing her. So first and foremost, let's talk about covering the laning phase by just a little bit, because it is really important that you understand how this laning phase should be played, because if you don't, well, you're not going to get anywhere with Akali. TLDR, play very passive and safe up until level 6, or of course unless an opportunity presents itself. However, if you're laning against a melee type champion, maybe mid lane or top lane, well, things could get a little bit easier for you based on the matchup. Spam your Q as often as possible on your opponent and go for the Q auto attack procs also whenever possible while being safe. An advanced trick with Akali is to use your W to get your Q going and waiting for the cooldown, but also using it to obstruct vision for your opponent that you're laning against if they're trying to get an auto attack on you or a targeted ability. Because if they're in the middle of casting something like maybe a Garen ultimate on you and then you go invisible midway through the cast animation of Garen ultimate, it'll instantly cancel. Also, a very important tip, CDR is not a primary stat on Akali because you don't have the energy regeneration to use your abilities with lower CDR than they are by default, because she is a very spammy type assassin. You're using abilities very often and your E abilities cooldown is already very low at rank 5, so you do not need CDR. Next, let's talk about the combos and how you want to approach an assassination. First and foremost, you almost always want to start off your combo with Gunblade first, not only for the slow and the damage, but because Gunblade's cooldown is reduced per single target auto attack or spell. So starting with this item first and then unleashing your full combo of spells and auto attacks will have your Gunblade go off cooldown much sooner. So a typical combo in the laning phase after you get your ultimate can be as follows. Throw your Q on your target, wait for the cooldown until your Q is about 2 or less seconds remaining before you can use it again, ult on the target, auto attack to proc the first Q mark, throw the new one, auto attack to proc that as well, and then use your E. From this you can pretend you're going back to the minions to get more CS, throw a Q on the target as you're backing away, they'll think it's safe to come up and farm as well, and the second they walk out of their tower range, ult back onto them and go for the kill. However, when you're going for the kill in team fights, which is a bit more difficult, the combo can be as follows. Initiate with your Gunblade first, followed by your R, Q onto the target as you get to them with an auto attack to proc that Q mark, use your E ability, then maybe you can use another ultimate, then throw another Q, proc that Q as well, and then more or less repeat that combo or whichever ability is off cooldown. But in a team fight, the next tip you see is using your Zhonya's after one rotation if necessary, which for the most part it will be. Because the second you jump into the middle of the team fight, well, the enemy team naturally is going to start trying to focus you. So Zhonya's is absolutely essential. Following this, let's quickly discuss what abilities do you want to level in what order. So you almost always want to start with your Q ability and then usually you get your W at level 2. Level 3, I like to get another point into the Q because your Q is just super important in the laning phase, maybe for CSing while you're trying to play safe, maybe going in for the damage trade on the melee opponent. And at level 4, I put a point in E and then I max Q first, followed by E, followed by W, followed by R. I also highly recommend to try and stay in the laning phase if possible till level 6, so that when you go back to your first back and get your items, that whole time spending buying items, walking back to the lane, your ultimate is slowly generating its stacks. But other than that, I feel like this part of the video should be very self-explanatory. Next, let's talk about the part that I feel like a lot of people really want to know about. What exactly do you build on Akali and what are the runes and masteries? Let us quickly talk about the runes and masteries first. Masteries 12, 8, 0, not much to say here, more or less self-explanatory, but in the ferocity tree I do like the one that gives you bonus AD and also gives you bonus AP instead of the lifesteal and spell vamp, just because of how hybrid Akali really is, and also for the Thunderlords. And for the runes, I actually run hybrid penetration reds, though if you can't afford those, you don't have the IP for that, flat magic pen reds work just as well. The yellows tend to usually be flat armor yellows, or you can switch them out for HP per level yellows instead if you're facing an AP mid laner and they have next to no AD damage on their team. The blues tend to also be either flat MR blues or MR per level blues as well, but again, if they don't have any magic damage whatsoever, you can switch these out for some AP per level instead. And now finally, let's talk about the items. Usually starting boots and 4 potions is quite good, however going cloth armor 5 potions instead against someone maybe like Zed, Yasuo, Talon also works just as well. Now the core items without question have to be the Gunblade, Zhonya's, your boots of choice, maybe like Sork boots or Merc boots, and a Void Staff later on in the game. And then the other items to fill the gap are very situational. If they have a lot of magic damage dealers, Abyssal without question is absolutely beautiful. If they have someone like Veigar who benefits off of your bonus AP, you can skip out the Rabadons and instead replace it with something like a Lich Bane. If their team has a lot of AD AD damage and next to no magic damage, then skip the Abyssal Scepter altogether and instead maybe get something like Lichbane or Rylai's Crystal Scepter. But in most games, I believe the 2 items you should choose from these 5 items will be the Abyssal Scepter and the Rabadons. The Zhonya's is important because you are a melee assassin at the end of the day, so when you go into the team fight, the Zhonya's effect is crucial to try and make the enemy team lose focus of you and not be able to burst you in a matter of seconds. Gunblade being the other item that you absolutely need as well, again for the active effect, the extra lifesteal and spellvamp it essentially does offer, and for helping you proc your Thunderlords that much easier. Now it is highly recommended to build Akali somewhat defensively while also getting offensive items, so the best 2 examples again, Zhonya's and Abyssal, items offering a lot of defensive stats while also offering a good amount of offensive stats. And this helps Akali really well with how she overall plays with her kit. And let's finally talk about the closing and final thoughts on Akali before we end off this video. So overall, I have to say I'm definitely liking Akali. The amount of damage she can output and how consistently she can do it as well is very satisfying. The resets on her ultimate work quite well in teamfights, and she has a lot of potential if you play her correctly and are not playing the laning phase pre-level 6 carelessly. But speaking of the laning phase pre-level 6, well, that's part of the bad stuff. I mean, it is quite horrible and you have to really play very patiently, which it can be very difficult for some players. But once you hit that juicy level 6, the damage is out of this roof and a lot of people will not be expecting it nor respecting it. So 6.5 out of 10 for Akali, very solid champion if ahead, but again, you have to play her in a very specific way. So I really hope you guys did enjoy this video. Please definitely hit the like button to show your support as it does help me quite a bit. Subscribe if you haven't, check out my other videos as well. I thank each and every one of you for watching and I truly hope to see you for my next video. Peace.